Greetings. This is Steve Muhammad, with the Black Narrative on the National Network View. And today we're going to be talking about faith and justice. And what's so beautiful is that we have an individual who will be able to touch on that subject to the best. So we're going to introduce our guest today, Father Michael Lewis Pfleger, from the great faith community of Saint Sabina in Chicago, Illinois. And I want to greet you, Father Pfleger, in the greeting words of peace that you know is Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam, my brother. Good to see you.
Good to see you too. And we want to just jump right on into it. We want to get a little bit into your history. 45 years, is that right? 45 years at Saint Sabina. Can you tell us a little bit about your history at Saint Sabina and how you got started?
Yes, brother. I came here in 1975 as an associate pastor, and I was told probably 6 weeks into it that the church was destined to close. It had about 70 members. They said sometime in the next 3 to 4 years that the church was going to close. So the pastor informed me we're just trying to maintain. And I said, I don't understand maintaining. You're either growing or you're decreasing. There's no such thing as maintaining. And so I began to work as if, we were here for 100 years and kept working. He was getting perturbed with it, and we were batting heads. So actually, in 1980, I decided they had not closed it yet, and they kept saying next year, and the next year it would. And it was just dwindling down. None of our buildings were closed. The gym building was closed. The top floor of the school, the basement of the church area was closed. So anyway, I was actually going to take a leave of absence and try to, just seek God and say, what did He have for me to do? Because this was not life-giving, and I didn't see it going forward. And at that time, in that November, the pastor had a massive heart attack and died. And then the cardinal was talking about using that for the opportunity now to close the church. Some folks began organizing, and bringing in people I'd never seen before, actually, for meetings with the archdiocese, and telling them, no, they want us to open, and they wanted me to be there with them. So finally, after some pressure at the end of December, actually 24th, it was Christmas Eve, he came out to see me. He said, I'm going to put you in here as permanent administrator. And I said, what does that mean? He says, there's no such thing. He said, I'm doing it until things quiet down, then I'm moving you. And here I am in 2020, went on to become, so I've been here, and I said, we're going to build it up. And now we are the largest African-American Catholic church in the city, and we're one of the 5th or 6th largest in the country. So God has really blessed us, and we decided we were going to just base our ministry here on the Word of God. And we did away with all the bingo and the Las Vegas nights. On the fundraising was going on immediately in one day. And I said, either God's going to keep us and sustain us, or we're not going to make it. And God has been very good to us. And so it's been an evolution over the years. We started out immediately meeting with the community and said, how do we serve you? And in fact, all the outreach ministries that we have now, we have several. We have our outreach center, social service center, about one block from here. We feed about 900 people a week through that. We have in a clothing room, and then we have counselors that meet with people who may have different issues that we can help them out with. We have a Saint Sabina Elders Village, which is an 80-unit senior building for low-income seniors. We have the ARC Youth Center, where we have all of our different programs for young people and for young adults. Our academy school, which is preschool through 8th grade. Our employment resource center, we have across the street, as well as our tech center in another building. We have a Strong Futures program, which is our program to help our young brothers and some sisters also that come out with a record, or either are presently on parole or on some sort of interaction with the law, and so help them get stabilized provide mentoring and coaching to them, as well as help getting them a job. And then we have our Sign Learning Garden, which is, we have just expanded that now. We have 4 lots that working with growing. We'll never be the farm out in Michigan,
Right.
but we have growing all sorts of vegetables. And it's a teaching garden. So all the youth that come through our school and all the youth in our youth center, as well as the seniors in our senior building, all come over there and learn about growing, learn about food deserts, learn about making fresh food and fresh salads, and they make them there. And so everybody goes to our school and youth center and the senior building goes through classes at our learning garden. So it's expanded over the year as people have said these are things we need, then we try to make it a comprehensive one-stop.
Absolutely. And that's progressive right there. And so, you know, before we go any further with all of these programs that you have going, how can people, we'll just ask now instead of at the end, how can people help?
Well, certainly let us know on what interests you have and how you can be involved. You can certainly contact the church at 773-483-4300. Also can email me directly at Pastor Pfleger, PastorPfleger, now you know I'm old, Ameritech.net, AMERITECH. But they can always contact us here and see what their interests are and any way they'd like to be involved in any of our programs or support any of our programs. Thank you.
Yes, sir. And so tell us a little bit about your childhood. What shaped Father Pfleger? If you could tell us about your experience at St. Thomas More and the church and you seeing Martin Luther King Jr. Tell us how that shaped your life.
Well, I grew up in St. Thomas More, as you mentioned, the area there. It was a very white, middle-class, inbred area, mostly city workers and a lot of police and fire officers. And freshman and sophomore year high school, I got an amazing opportunity to go and spend the summers at a Native American reservation in Oklahoma. And they were mind-boggling to me to walk in there. And the first couple of weeks, myself and some of the teenagers from Native Americans went into the town to get ice cream. And the store owner said, they can come in, you cannot, because you're white and they're not. And of course, I never knew of anything, I never understood anything like that. So it began to help me understand the whole prejudice and the not only the bigotry, but also the genocide that took place with Native American people, and learn their culture, learn their spirituality, and learn their history. I spent 2 summers down there. Then in junior year of high school, I had heard about this man, Martin Luther King Jr., who was marching in the south side of Chicago into Marquette Park about open housing. And it was just all this negative stuff on the TV and in the neighborhood talking about him. And so I asked my parents one day, and I said, my mother, I said, who is this document? All she said was, he's a good man. And she said, no more. And the more I began to hear, I think the negative, as much as if I want to know, I want to see him for myself. And so when he was marching over to Marquette Park that August, myself and 2 of my friends rode our bikes over there without telling anybody. We first rode down 71st Street between Western, going over west to the park. And the first thing I saw, which I never saw before in my life, was the Nazi headquarters that had a building there in 71st Street. And the swastikas and all the racial slurs, and it was frightening to see. And years later, when I asked my parents, I said, why didn't you ever tell me? They said they would never drive down that street because they never allowed myself or my sister to see that. But then we went to Marquette Park, and one of the guys kept the bikes, and 2 of us walked over. And when I actually saw Dr. King, he had already been hit by a rock when he first entered the park off of 67th and Kedzie. But here he was amidst all this hatred and all this racial slurs and people throwing things. And on my way over to see him, what was interesting to me was saw people there that I knew, saw people that went to my church, some friends or brothers or fathers of some of my classmates in my school. I'd never seen this side of them. So watching them and then seeing him and all this hate coming him and never responding to the hate, but always saying, you know, we're brothers and sisters. We have to learn to live together or we'll perish as fools. And I rode my bike home that day saying there's something about this man that I have to learn. Either he's crazy or he has a power that I want to know about. So I began going to the library. Of course, there was not internet. There was, you know, for phones and computers. So I've been going to the library and I read everything he had written up to 1966. And then studied him and really realized what a powerful, powerful person. In fact, I'm one of these people that get very angry when they water down Dr. King's message. Dr. King was a very radical preacher and never liked being called an activist, always liked being called a preacher, a man of God, because he did what he did out of his faith. And so it transformed me that day, both watching the hate and watching him. And then as I studied him and learned of him, it was very clear to me what I wanted to do. I really wanted to go to college, then go join the movement. And go to college then, and he gets murdered. And so I continued on in seminary. And later he got ordained, and I spent some years on the west side at, as you know, Precious Blood, and there got exposed to the Black Panthers and the Fred Hampton. So I had all these pivotal moments in my life, and brother, it always reminds me. I probably didn't know until I was 30 years old, and I began to look at how the dots that God had drawn together. Because when I grew up as a child, my sister was 10 years older than me, was mentally challenged. And I watched her being laughed at in those days, was called retarded, and all the pain and the hurt she went through. And it created a rage in me. I just knew that rage was growing because my sister was one of the kindest, sweetest persons I ever saw or met in my life. So I had this rage about how she was discriminated against. Then I go down to Oklahoma and see how the Native Americans were discriminated against. And I go to the West Side and see how African Americans, I saw how Dr. King was. And all of that was, little did I know, depositing in me and shaping who I was and who I would later be in life as I went on into ministry. And so when I got ordained, I said I wanted to try to build a kind of faith community, a beloved community that Dr. King had spent so much time doing.
That's beautiful. And I remember the words of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan when he said, where would we be without pain? You know, and that's amazing that you say that, you know, that you really, your sister and what you saw her experience, that began to build in you, you know, the desire to see justice for those who may not be able to get justice for themselves.
You know, brother, I just go back to that point a minute, and this is about pain, and he and I have spoken about this. You know, when Jesus rises from the dead and he appears to his apostles, and we know that he had all the wounds of Calvary. He told Thomas, put your hand in my hand, put your hand in my side, see these wounds so that you may believe. And many times in the Christian faith, well, they say that when we rise, we will have the glorified body, and we will have no more human. In fact, we'll have this glorified body. Now I used to wonder why would Jesus, why would he still have the wounds and the scars of crucifixion? And Alan Bosek, the great South African anti-apartheid leader, told me one day, he said, I believe when we get to heaven that Jesus is going to say to each of us, where are your wounds? And he said, if you have no wounds, was there nothing worth fighting for? Was there nothing worth dying for? So I really believe, going to what you said of the Honorable Mr. Farrakhan, and all of us have learned in life, that you cannot grow to your purpose, to your potential, or be a prophetic voice in the world if you're afraid of wounds and scars. They
Mm.
are the road that moves to that, and we all should have them.
Yes, sir. And adding to that, great sacrifice that individuals like yourself and the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan and just any freedom fighter for his people. We look at even like, for instance, Edward Snowden, and the great sacrifice that he's
Yes, sir.
making.
Yes,
These are
sir.
great sacrifices for freedom, justice, and equality.
Yes, sir.
I wanted to ask, going back to a point, is that this media, when I was growing up and learning about Martin Luther King, I really didn't like Martin Luther King, only because of the media's watered down version of Martin Luther King. And it
Yeah.
was only later when I learned about his freedom fighting in his latter years that I learned that this man was willing to die on what he believed.
Absolutely. And I think we have to learn, and I say this all the time, not just about Brother Martin, Brother Malcolm, Brother Medgar, Brother Farrakhan, and as I've seen it happen to myself and so many times, is that the media can't deal with what you say. They can't deal with truth. So they try to, there's two techniques that they use. Either that's not cover you at all, like you don't exist, or cover you and define you how they want to define you. I mean, look how we've seen that done over the years with the brother minister. I mean, they'll take an excerpt, and that's what become when he spoke here a year ago after his been shut off of
Twitter
Facebook and
Facebook.
Twitter. Yeah, and the next day the headlines of the paper, were one line, and then then the story about the Holocaust Museum that said I ran a sanctuary of hate at St. Sabina's, but that's what the media does. The media seeks to either define, or the media seeks to, we're going to cover them at all as if they don't exist, but they can never ever deal with the truth. And so they do what they do, and we can either let that be intimidating, what they did to Jeremiah Wright during Barack Obama's first campaign. But we can either let that either try to change us or eat us up, or just continue to say what we say and let the truth be told, and let the media do what they do, and let those who, as the scriptures say, have the ears to hear.
Right. And, it takes me to, I guess, a scripture where, they're saying, hallelujah, on the highest. And
Right.
then the next minute they're saying, crucify him. And I'm wondering, now, how did this flip just this quick? And then we read about the scribes, which the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, when we bring that up to modern day time, we're talking about the scribes, the writers, the media. And Malcolm was saying that, this media has the power to make you love the one you should hate and hate the one you should love.
You should love. Absolutely. And that's, and we got to understand. And you know what's so sad about that, brother? It's often not that local reporter on the street, or that journalist who just comes in to get a job in a newspaper, but it's shots that are called from the above, and who then send it down to the various editors-in-chief, and the rest in the media, from print as well as to the TV media, who give instructions, what the story should be, what they want the story to be, how they want it to be told, and that's why I always tell new ministers, new people in journalism and in the TV area, don't get in this if you're not willing to be truthful to yourself and to the story. Don't get in this. Don't go to a pulpit in a mosque or a temple or a church if you are not willing to be true to the God who called you to do this, because otherwise you will become compromised, and the reality is you will become the one you used to hate.
Mm. Yes, sir. And so tell us a little bit, getting into your long history at St. Sabina and some of the groups that you've worked with. Of course, my interest is in that great warrior, Fred Hampton, the
Yes.
Black Panther Party. Tell us a little bit about your relationship with Fred Hampton and the Black Panther Party.
Well, actually met Chairman Hampton on the West Side when I was at Precious Blood, and we were very involved in the community there. And I was kind of the outreach person for the young people there. I was in college, and then I was in graduate school, and then theology school while I was there. And so we ran into each other's paths, and I told him countless times how much respect I had for him because he. I believe Chairman Hampton was one of the geniuses of community organizing.
Mm.
I mean, I've listened to and sat under Solinsky, and he's a great man of knowledge and the rest, but could not scratch a surface of Chairman Hampton. So I got to know him in the community, and one of my intriguing desires to know him was as I lived there at Congress and Western in Precious Blood Church, I realized there was nobody in that community, no church, no organization, nobody in that community was doing more to serve the neighborhood than the Black Panthers.
Mm.
And so I said, I got to know about this group who is serving the community, because that's what I believe we're called to do. And so I reached out to him, wanted to let him know how I can be of help. He informed me that one of the things I could do there at the breakfast program, of course, it was going on in Rockwell Gardens at that time, a place so I could go pick up bread from the local store. It's funny because I wore my little collar, and they thought I was bringing it back to Precious Blood Church, and I was bringing it over to the Black Panther headquarters.
Wow.
Then later, when the Panthers needed a place to meet because they could no longer meet where they were, and he had spoken to me about needing a place to meet and asked me, did I ever think Precious Blood would allow them? And I said, I'll see. And I asked the pastor, who was a very, very progressive, truth-loving man. And I asked him about the possibility of the Panthers meeting there, and he said yes. So the Panthers began meeting at Precious Blood. I remember asking Chairman Hampton when they were first coming to meet there, I said, it would be a possibility for me to sit in the meetings? He said, my brother is the Black Panthers. And I said, okay. I said, but this white kid needs to learn from you. So I would sit outside the door and listen and learn from him and be a student of his, so that I could grasp the knowledge that he had to give. So, and I was there up and through, of course, when he was murdered, him and Mark Clark was in their house. And then we became part of the group that made it our business to make sure that Hanrahan, the state's attorney, was voted out of office. Right. And so we worked hard on that campaign to get him removed.
Now tell us a little bit about, the one faith, right? One blood, one baptism. It's individuals like yourself. I don't know if you know of an individual named Reverend Jerome McCory, who is a good friend of mine. Oh, okay.
Yes, sir.
And it's individuals like yourself, Christians who can embrace Muslims, and Muslims who can embrace Christians. They seem as though they're the most active, and the most those who will stand up against injustice. What would you say to those who are afraid, to embrace their Muslim brother or their Jewish brother?
Well, you know what's so sad about that? I think it's not only fear, but obviously I think I think the fear is what others will say. I remember the first time, oh my God, 30-some years ago, at a dinner at the Palace over on Woodlawn, and I was invited. There was about 10 or 12 Black ministers there, and myself, and I was so intrigued listening to the minister speak for all this time at the dinner So at one point we were talking of a conversation. I raised my hand. I said, Minister, I want you to come and speak at St. Savannah Church. And he smiled and he grinned and he says, brother, I'll talk to you afterwards. And then while we were leaving toward the end, he told me to wait to the end. So I waited. And a number of the ministers come up to me and said, you can't follow through with that. You can't have him coming to St. Savannah Church. You will be destroyed. You will be run out of here. You can't make this happen. And I was getting all this, and it kind of really convinced me all the more why it would be important to do.
Wow.
And so afterwards, I'm talking to the minister, and I had a conversation. He said, the brothers were talking to you, weren't they? I said, yes. And he says, so I understand completely you want to back. I said, sir, I'm ever more committed. And so he gave me a copy of the Quran, and he wrote his number down, and he says, you pray about it and then get back to me. Yeah. And I did, and called him. And I think the first time he came to speak here was in 1987, I think.
Okay.
But it was amazing because what disturbed me. So I think it's a fear of what kind of backlash you're going to get. Mm-hmm. But I think the other part of it is obviously you're very insecure. If you feel that you cannot stand with what you believe and respect somebody else for what they believe. What's so sad about it, brother, is that I don't think you can be a good Muslim, a good Jew, or a good Christian and be afraid of or disrespect any of the other major faiths. Mm-hmm. And if we get beyond the surface stuff of all of our holy books, the Quran, the Torah, the Bible, the reality is we all have some basic foundation of respect, of care for the poor, of honoring of each other, of called to love each other and for justice. If we just concentrate on those very basic foundations of our faiths and forget all the stuff up here, mm-hmm. then we can have differences up here, but our foundations are so basically and the same. That's where we need to unite, and that's where we need to bond together to become forces against evil in society. But the enemy has done a very good job of, and not just from Muslim, Christian, Jews, within the Muslim community, within the Jewish community, within the Christian community, we've been fractioned off to one another and continue to remain weak of the power force we can be. So I just think anybody who cannot come together with Islam or Judaism or Christianity and share and talk and build relationships and move together shows their fear and shows their weakness.
Right.
And that they're really not true. They're really not true to their holy book.
Yes, sir. That's right. I mean, you pointed out that's what it comes down to, don't it? They're faking it. They're faking it. And
absolutely. They're false prophets.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And we've got to name them. And the minister often speaks about how the false prophets in all faiths. And we have to not be afraid to name them and identify them, because if we don't, then we become part of that watered down theology. There are some things that are just non-negotiable.
Right.
And our love and our respect for one another, our care for the poor, our being voices of truth. And unfortunately, one of the things that's happened, and I believe in the faith communities, for decades now, is truth has been sold. And everybody's afraid to speak truth anymore, because going back to what you mentioned earlier, and Brother Minister talked about, the cost of it. We have a large banner that hangs in our church. It says, the discipleship costs, are you willing? If you are not willing to pay the price of discipleship, then get out of it. Get out of it. You're not a good Christian. You're not a good Jew. You're not a good Muslim. It's cost, and truth costs, particularly in a day where truth has been so watered down, and the lie is so acceptable, and injustice has become normalized. That it's more costly now, I think, than ever.
Yes,
And
sir.
we better have the courage. You can't be a good Muslim, a good Christian, or a good Jew if you have no courage.
That's right. And there's another scripture that comes to mind, and that is, those who seek to save their lives will lose it, and
Yep.
those who
Lose their
lose their
lives.
lives
Save it.
will save it.
Yes, sir.
Can you talk? I mean, the preachers today, they're very disconnected from the social issues and the pain,
Right.
of the people. Can you talk a little bit about the role of the church? What is the role of the church, and not just the church, but all spiritual institutions in this day and time?
Well, I think it's, first of all, it means a willingness to be committed to the truth of whatever your holy book is,
Mm-hmm.
and not the surface, soft, comfortable spot. One of the problems I think with churches, mosques, and synagogues today is they have become places where racists and bigots and can feel at home and feel comfortable. They can sit and somebody can stand in a pulpit and you can feel you're a good Christian, a good Jew, or a good Muslim and comfortable in that place. The church, the mosque, the synagogue ought to be the most dangerous place in the world to evil.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And something is dangerously wrong
Mm.
when a racist, a bigot, a supremacist can sit in a mosque, a synagogue, or a church and feel like they are a good Christian, Muslim, or Jew.
Mm.
But that, unfortunately, the day in which we live. So I always say, brother, that we have, in the Christian church, I say all the time, we suffer from what many people in America suffer from: identity theft.
Right.
The church has lost her identity, and she's has this spiritual laryngitis, if you will, where she's lost her prophetic voice.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's why so many young people say, "Why be a part of this?" Because this is part of the very structure that I'm fighting.
Right.
We look, in the scripture, we're supposed to be in the world, but not of the world. But unfortunately, too many churches look just like the world.
Mm.
And they're so afraid of speaking truth to their people because they're afraid they'll turn on them, they'll be angry with them, maybe they won't contribute. If God be God, trust him.
That's right.
And God will protect you and God will provide. And unless we can't preach faith and not have faith.
Mm.
So our faith is in God, our trust is in God, and a commitment to his truth and his word. Do that and let the chips fall where they fall.
Absolutely. The minister on the 4th of July, he gave a lecture, a speech, an address called The Criterion. And in that lecture, he mentioned yourself and mentioned you as his brother in faith. Can you talk a little bit? I mean, I know you spoke some of the first time he went to Saint Sabina and spoke. And can you tell us what that, if you can remember, what the title of that lecture was?
Well, I certainly can.
Okay.
Let me tell you a quick little backstory to that. So I
Yes.
was in the Holy Land for 10 days right before, and it was announced that the minister was coming here. And then I was getting calls from the church here, and they're saying that the cardinal was trying to get in touch with me because word had become public. It was in the press that the minister was coming to Saint Sabina Church to speak, and the cardinal was very upset. I said, I'm in the Holy Land right now. I'll talk when I get back. So I got back like 3 days before. I think that was maybe a Thursday of that week before. And I got back and the cardinal called. I got him on the phone. He said, well, you have to disinvite the minister immediately. He cannot speak there. You see what's been in the press. You see the pressure we're getting. He can't speak there. So I said, well, Cardinal, you're the head of the church. You're my superior. And if you choose to do that, this is your church. You can come here and tell him, but I'm not going to tell him. I invited him and I stand by my invitation. If you want to come and tell him he's disinvited, you come here and tell the people. But I'm not going to disinvite him because as far as I'm concerned, he's welcome here and I will continue to say he's welcomed here. Oh, he was furious with me and hung up the phone on me, called me back again, tell me you're being, I said, no, I'm not being disobedient, sir. You're more than welcome to come here, but you can't ask me to do something against my very beliefs. And so he's more than welcome to come here. And you're more than welcome to stop him and to say no. And I know the minister, and if you got up or you put out a word or even called him up and said, you cannot come to St. Spa, the minister would back off because he's not going to come against your will there. I said, but I'm not going to disinvite. You're not going to put me to do your dirty work that I don't believe in. So he hung up again. And the minister came that Sunday. That Sunday, the minister's sermon was, praising Jesus Christ, my Lord and my Savior. And a magnificent sermon, as the minister always does. And so, you know, this is back in the cassette days. So he took the cassettes of that talk. And that night, I drove it down to the Cardinal's house and put it in his mailbox.
Wow.
And told him to listen to it. And it probably was about 3 months later before he listened to it and then told me how magnificent the talk was. And then I set up a meeting with him and the minister. I also set up one with Cardinal George and the minister at the minister's house. But so the minister and I developed this, I think, a very deep love for each other and respect for. I call him one of my mentors and one of my best friends over these years. He's one of a very few handful of people that him, I think Jeremiah Wright, I think Cornell, Harry Belafonte, there's this very small group that they could call me at 3 in the morning and say, I need you here now, and I would be there. I don't have to ask what or for whatever. And I believe they could do the same thing of me, and I would be there. Spend a lot of time in conversation. He's spoken here, I think now about 4 or 5 times. We've had a tremendous friendship over the years, spent a lot of time in his house there. We just sit sometimes and watch the news together. Been to, had dinner together, spent time, went out to the farm constantly, and we spend whole days together and get out in the golf cart and ride over to the end of the farm and sit there and talk for hours. I remember one time a few years ago, he said, come on, let's go take a ride. And I said, Minister, you're driving? And was in his 2-seater car. And he said, yes, I'm driving. You don't think I can drive? And so I said, okay. And he told the brothers, leave us alone. Me and my brother are going out to talk. Leave us alone. Just stay here. And we went out and drove and drove. All I remember is we stopped in the middle of a cornfield and he turned off the car and we talked for hours. And he said, now we got to get back because sisters have dinner ready for us.
Wow.
It's just been, he has been a true friend to me. And I've tried to be a true friend to him. Yeah. There's never anything that's been off the table when we spoke. His family and my family have become very close. I joke oftentimes with the brothers around him saying, if a bull comes, I'm going to beat you in front of it before you get there. I said, because I just love him dearly. And I see him as one of the most misunderstood people. But I also see him as a consistent, uncompromising voice, and love him for that. I remember one time I was in the hospital. They didn't know he was going to make it. Mother Khadijah called me and told me he's at the hospital and doesn't look well. And I said, I'm on my way. And I went down there, and he was very, very sick at the time. And I told him, I said, you're not going anywhere. I say, "Good God, I got too much work for you, and I need you too much, and God knows I need you too much." And we prayed, and we've had so many wonderful experiences over the years. When Jeremiah, after he had a stroke, the minister and I went out to see him. One of my favorite pictures is one of Jeremiah and he and I standing together at Jeremiah's house. And just been a great friend and mentor and brother to me over the years, who I have such deep love for.
Yes, sir. So that criterion, that lecture, what was something that you got out of that lecture?
Wow. I think one of the things that, and this is going to be really general, but I think one of the things that I walked away from that day, looking at him and saying, he is a uncompromising, seasoned prophet who is, when you can look at somebody that you've known for 30 some years and look at the consistency of their word, the consistency of their truth, and the consistent evolution and growth put into one person, it doesn't come better than that. I'll tell you one thing that I joked about him with after. I said, "You look like a little kid when you looked up and saw the banners with the planes."
Yeah.
Were you there that day?
Yeah, I was watching it on the webcast.
And when he saw them planes, he had a grin on him all over his face. I said, "You look like a little kid." He said, "Wasn't it magnificent?"
Yes, sir.
I said, "Absolutely." But I think his message has always been the same.
Right.
But he's evolved as a person. He's evolved in depth. And he's been consistent in his truth and bowed down to nobody except God. Didn't care when Muslims got mad at him. He didn't care when Christians got mad at him, when Jews got mad at him. He was going to be true to Allah.
Yes, sir.
And so you can take different things of statements that he said, but it's the character of what he said that I think that continues to feed me and bless me. I was talking to Brother Nick Cannon, who of course was there that day, and then a few weeks later, Brother Nick flew out here because we had been friends for a few years, and I did a podcast with him, and then he went out to meet with the minister that same day, and we were talking about this guy's unbelievable, consistent character and integrity, and yet, like I say, the evolution. The minister, as you know, often speaks about he's involved in the way he says things. Sometimes he said, because you learn as a young preacher, trust me, I know, you'll say things in ways that you grow in the way we speak things and preach things later in years, so that the ears can hear.
Right.
But watch the man who is consistently involved, whose substance continues to amaze me, whose strength continues to amaze me, and whose integrity and character continue to stay intact. And he gives me great courage in facing the hate. And I've faced a lot of hate in my life, and hate over the years in our different charges we made against the alcohol industry and the rest, and fighting them, and then of course my relationship with him and his relationship with me, we both experienced a lot of hate. I've gotten a lot of feedback. He got a lot of feedback, brother Malik, he for his relationship with me, and so it's just it's been a 30-some year teaching lesson. Right. And how to try to stay true first to God and second to yourself.
That's right. Because like you said, there are those who are looking for on the outside, and they just don't understand. They haven't grown, on that spiritual level to understand that pure relationship. to be
Yeah,
able to
and
call one. Hmm.
the other thing is, brother, is that look at the day in which we live. I mean, truth has been abandoned.
Right.
You know, truth has totally been abandoned. There's not a we don't love truth anymore,
Hmm.
and we lack courage.
Right.
And so I think the one thing that that I try to say all the time, because people look at the minister, and the minister is such a witness and such a strong person who stands for so much. But what I try to tell people, and I try to live myself and tell my members here, is that don't look up to me.
Hmm.
If there's something you admire in me, then make sure it's in you.
Mm.
You know, so the best Muslim can look at a Farrakhan and say, how can I have the love for truth and the courage to speak it and live it that he had?
Mm.
Because if we just, and people did the same thing with King,
Hmm.
we're going to put them on pedestals. So if we keep them on a pedestal, then we never have to measure up to it.
Hmm.
But if we be one amongst us, then it's not about looking to see what this one, how this person, how a King lived or a Farrakhan lives or how no, how can I be like him
Hmm.
rather than just put him in a place where I can dismiss myself from ever having to live up to that character. Um,
Yes.
but we can't do that.
And so I wanted to touch just a few more things, Father, and then we'll go ahead and close it on out. But I
Sure.
wanted you to really, help people understand the beauty of our brother Nick Cannon, and some
Mm,
of the things that he's been working with you through the years. Because many, of course, when we see individuals like Brother Nick Cannon, we just see that celebrity side. We don't
right.
really, that the media, once again, they don't really show that activism side. And so he came, of course, as you know,
Hmm.
under the attack. But can you talk to his character and what you all might have said, of course, without going too deep into it, but what you might have said to him to help, keep him in the good spirits.
Well, what I've watched him over the years grow and become much more outspoken about things he believes and about the passions for justice, right? You know, he's made some wonderful videos over the last few years on justice and on racism. But I've watched this person in him that was always there, but in the entertainer realm, there's so much of that has always been to be careful. You know, be careful because of what they'll do to you, or in the church realm, be careful with what they'll do to you. Be in the society realm, be careful what the media do to you. And just trying to tell him. Then he saw what happened, and Viacom came out, and so fired him immediately. And what I was sharing with him is the fact that the gospel, the Quran, the Torah, are not for careful people.
Mm.
They're for people who decide there's something more important than being careful, or being liked,
Mm.
or with false approval. That at the end of the day, there's only one person you got to be true to, and that's God. And that's secondly to yourself. And then I told him, I said, finding a circle of people who you trust their integrity and trust their voice, that you can share with, bounce things off, talk with, wrestle things with, who are in your inner circle, and don't get disappointed because those people who may hang with you um, don't understand you.
Mm.
Um, they're not meant to understand you.
Hmm.
Your job is to speak it and deposit it in people wherever you go, and to use your platform for truth,
Yeah.
and use your platform for what you believe, and use your platform not just to get paid.
Mm.
Uh, and I think that's why we had a deep relationship, and I think that's what is such respect for the minister is because getting moving, and it's a growing
Right.
place, and moving to that place where, we have all these crazy books and well, how to win friends and influence people. I'm okay, you're okay. All that nonsense. And we're so busy looking for the approval of man, but the only approval that's necessary is the approval of God. And God will bring to you who you need, and God will provide for you what you need. But you have to take that step. I always say, like Peter, when you step out of that boat, and we talk about him stepping out on water, but remember there was 11 other people in that boat that said, hell no, I'm not getting out of this boat. You want to do this, you do this by yourself. And I'm sure we're talking about him as he did it, but he did it. And they never experienced what he experienced because they never had the courage and the faith to do it. So I just tried to share with him that the road ahead, if he continues in this route, is going to be lonely. It's a lonely road. It's a road of persecution. What did Jesus say? Deny yourself, pick up your cross, then follow me. If you're not willing to do those two things, don't follow me. And if we're not willing to pay that price, and we're not willing to stand for what we believe and on what we believe, you won't be able to handle it. And only your faith in God is going to be able to sustain you. Only that. And Nick is such a good brother. Like right now, he's going to get a degree in theology right now at Howard University. He's taking it online, not because he wants to be a minister, he wants to be ordained. He just wants to grow in his knowledge of God. And that's just so wonderful about it. I told him I'm so proud of him. I'm so excited for him and how God's going to use him in the days. He's already used him. But what's ahead of him is, is so much greatness. How God's going to use him. And
absolutely,
I'm excited about it.
Absolutely. And since we're on the topic of youth, Brother Nick Cannon, we'll stick with the youth and we'll start to close it out with that. And I wanted to, get your take on the violence that's in Chicago and what might be some of the causes of this violence, which, is now really is something that these causes that you'll touch on, we're seeing really throughout America with the collapse of the economy. But can you talk about that violence and the youth?
Well, first of all, our youth give me so much hope, and they're so courageous, and they so many of them don't even understand what the word fear means. And I love that about them. I love their strength, their courage, and their boldness. When we talk about the violence, brother, if you look at about the 15 to 17 neighborhoods, there's 77 neighborhoods in Chicago. There's 15 to 17 neighborhoods where most of the violence has seemingly been most shown its face. But you look at those neighborhoods, you see the same thread through all those neighborhoods: double-digit unemployment, underfunded, underperforming schools, lack of access to health, lack of access to healthy foods, lack of affordable housing, lack of economic development, lack of investment and opportunity, most coming back from prison with no opportunities, no chances, nothing provided for them. So no mental health access. So you see whole communities where have been neglected and abandoned for decades. And I always use the analogy: if you have two lions in a cage who are powerful, wonderful animals, and don't feed them, one will kill the other in survival of the fittest. If you cage in whole communities with no resources, no jobs, no education, no housing, no opportunity, no investment, why are we surprised? We have created the violence. See, we look at the violence that goes on the street corner, but we don't look at the violence that caused what goes on the street corner. There's a vertical and there's a horizontal violence. And one is a result of the other. And until we get to the roots of this violence, in America of racism and bigotry and neglect and abandonment of masses of people and community. Until we get to that, I tell people when I go talk groups, I'll talk about the violence on 79th Street. Only at first I can talk about the violence of LaSalle Street.
Come on, right.
And Dearborn and Clark Street and City Hall and the State of Illinois building, because that's where the violence begins.
That's right.
And all we're talking about is about the cause and effect of the violence out here. But until we deal with that violence, and Dr. King said, it didn't cost anything for America to integrate schools. It didn't cost America anything to integrate buses or integrate lunch counters. But if we are going to ever economically level the playing field, it's going to cost America trillions of dollars. And until she's willing to do that, America is the root of violence, and that's the reality we see today. And we hear, and of course, now we're going to hear and have hearing already that although there'll be new people in offices and mayors and governors and presidents, whatever, these are all the things we need to do. But now, because of COVID, there's no money. We'll hear that same old thing all over again. And I said, I've said this several times in the last months, wherever they went in that basement to print trillions of dollars to give out these $1,200 checks, go back down in the basement and start printing again.
That's right.
Because we are not going to satisfy or be settled again for the crumbs of what they want to throw. Can we say do a new building here or a new thing? No. No, and that's one of the reasons I understand, I support the defund of the police department, but I do not want to stand on the side of, so we take some money from the 1.6 billion of the police department and put this towards social programs. No. That's not enough. If you took the whole $1.6 billion budget of the police department in Chicago and put it in the west and south side, it's not enough. It's going to take trillions of dollars. They redid the South Loop. They redid the West Loop. In 1974, I ran a soup line on Madison and Halsted. Now I can't afford restaurants on Madison and Halsted. They redevelop where they want to. And we must, as a people of Chicago and as a nation, be very careful in the okie doke here that's happening of, so some corporate buildings hangs out a banner, Black Lives Matter, or we take down statues or lower Confederate flags or take the picture off a rice box or a syrup bottle. Damn that.
That's right.
That doesn't mean a thing. That's a superficial surface thing. Because while you took the Confederate flag down, the Confederate spirit is stronger now than it's been in years. It's emboldened. And so until we have the courage to deal with the roots of racism and bigotry and hatred and justice in this country, America does not need some band-aiding. America needs a transfusion. The evil is in the bloodstream of America. And until we have the courage to get this blood transfusion and dismantle the system, and say, people say, "Oh, America's broken." America's not broken. America is doing exactly what she was made to do. She was born and birthed in genocide. She was built on slavery, and she's committed to supremacy. And we have to understand that's America. That's the one thing Donald Trump did. He showed us the real America, because we don't have the perception that we're this wonderful, great country. We are an evil country. And until we dismantle this evil system and have the courage to build truth in this country, I think that what we see, whatever America has seen in these last months and year, you ain't seen nothing yet.
That's right. That's right. And that's why I wanted to, you to talk about some of those causes for violence, because now we see this literally proliferating throughout America. The food deserts, the healthcare, the poor education, the lack of opportunity, the unemployment, all of these, now all of America is suffering. So if that's if Chicago is a sign, then like you said, we're in for some rough times. So I wanted to, and I would love to go into so many other things, but I don't want to keep you on here all night. But so I wanted to go into, as we close out, what does the faith community do? Muslim, Christian, Jew. You know, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan at the Million Man March, he talked about or urged young people to join on to organizations. What does the faith community particularly need to do to draw back the youth?
Well, I think I constantly say that where we see America right now, and I can speak about the world, but just so we speak about America, where we see America right now in the broken, dismantled shape that it is a direct result for me of the faith communities.
Mm-hmm.
And I say that because, you know, you pass laws to make lynching illegal, to make segregation illegal, to make people allowed to vote. There's laws for that.
Mm-hmm.
But as Dr. King taught me, you cannot pass a law to change the heart.
Mm-hmm.
That's the responsibility of the faith communities. And the reason America continues to be in this wickedness in which she lives today is because the faith communities have now become the theologians of Pharaoh.
Oh.
And the faith communities no longer see themselves as being the prophetic voice. They sit at the table with Pharaoh now. When in fact, what they should be doing is breaking into Pharaoh's door and pulling up the chair at the table.
That's right.
And be the voice in the wilderness, crying out, asking the questions, and demanding the answers, and pushing. You know, we keep wanting to settle for things to get a little bit better. That's not the Bible. It's not the Quran. It's not the Torah. God does not want a better America. God wants a new America. He wants a new, he calls us to become new creations and build a new heaven and a new earth. And we keep trying to do a remix of the mess we got. We don't need a remix of America. We need a new America. And so if the faith community does not regain her identity to be the prophetic voice and to speak thus says the Lord to the institutions of government and corporate America, if the faith community does not take this up, the faith community will die. God will remove his hand from it. They will fall, and America will continue to fall because God is not going to be mocked.
That's right. That's right.
So the faith community to me is the most important of all the institutions of America right now. Yes. So while America has become more naked in her evilness in her wickedness these last few years, let me tell you, the truth of the matter is that she's going to continue to fall. I don't care who sits in the White House. Unless we have enough courage to begin to dismantle the systems and demand it to be who God's called it to be and not what we've settled on. And I think the faith communities will be the first to fall.
Yes,
and
sir.
I think that's when I say, let me close on this. I think it is also the reason that so many pastors, imams, and rabbis fear Louis Farrakhan.
Yes, sir.
Because he makes them, exposes them for who they are.
That's right. That's right. That's an excellent point to close on. And as I said, I wanted to, the time has flown by. We didn't get to go into the beautiful mural that's in St. Sabina. Also the parody. They say what parody is the best flattery or something like that. And so your parody in the Spike Lee movie.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. how did you feel about that? I mean, you being, someone playing you in a movie.
John Cusack does a much better job of me than me. Spike is been a dear friend for years upon years. He has been a courageous voice in the movie industry. Going back to, his look at, it's so crazy to look at Do the Right Thing,
Right.
and look at what's going on today, and you only have to change the date.
That's right.
It's the same story, and he is a man who people I say, well, he was ahead of his time. No, he's a deep man of faith, and he's always been one to try to speak truth in his own through his own talent and his own gift, and so it was a blessing. We would talk for time and time again about the violence in Chicago, and he wanted to come and do something about it. And he said, I want to be based out of St. Sabina. Can I do that? So he had his office here in one of our buildings, and for the months and months of moving on, he's been here, and he spoke every few months. Spike will fly in to come to Sunday service and fly out after service. He's that kind of a person. He's a really, really solid brother who I have deep love for.
Yes, sir. So any closing words before we close on out? And please tell the people once again how to contact yourself.
Yes. Let me say this. I'll give you that first and then close. I think that, again, our website, you can always check out our website at www.Saint Sabina, spelled out SAINTSABINA.org. They can certainly contact the church, 773-483-4300, 773-483-4300, or email me at Pastor Pfleger, PASTORPFLEGER at Ameritech, AMERITECH.net. I think we are in a crossroads right now. We're in a crossroads, like I started out talking about the fig tree, where God was ready to just cut it down because we have been, as a country and as faith communities, so fruitless. And now I think that God's mercy and his grace gives us another opportunity. And I think it is now up to us to say, are we going to make use of the opportunity? God gives us the grace, the mercy, and the opportunity to make this tree fruitful, to this garden that from Genesis has been placed in our hands. And we are the present generation who now this garden sits in our hands. In Proverbs, there's a story where Solomon is riding past a vineyard, and he looks in the vineyard and he sees weeds and thorns and rocks and a wall torn down. And he says, who is the sluggard who owns this vineyard? I think we put it in modern day times, we'd say, who is the slum landlord who owns this vineyard? And I think we live in a day where God has placed the care of this earth in our hands. And I think oftentimes God today looks down and says, who are the sluggards? Who are the absentee landlords whom I placed in charge? That the garden has so many thorns and so many broken down walls and weeds of injustice and inequity. We are at a divine moment now. Are we going to take responsibility for this earth and his people God's placed in our hands? Or will we become the sluggards and some landlords who God will condemn? It's in our hands right now, and it's up to every one of us, not up to just a Farrakhan or up to some leader somewhere. It's up to every one of us. What are we going to do as individuals so that every place we go, the workplace, the school place, the marketplace, our block, our neighbors, our homes. How are we going to bring the presence of God into our places we go? And if we don't, then we will see the judgment of God brought on us. Sodom and Gomorrah, remember?
Mm-hmm.
Abraham begged with God. God said he was going to destroy it. And Abraham said, well, if there's 50 righteous people, will you spare it? God said, yes. 40, yes. 30, 20. If there's 10 righteous people, will you spare it? And God says, yes. And then the next chapter, Sodom and Gomorrah is in ashes. Why?
Mm-hmm.
Because Sodom and Gomorrah was so evil. No, evil is not more powerful than good.
Right.
It was destroyed because God couldn't find 10 righteous people to stand up. So will we see America in ashes, or will there be some righteous people that will stand up?
Good Lord. Thank you. We're here once again with Father Michael Lewis Pfleger. And that Lewis, what's going on with that? We got Minister Lewis, we got Jesse Lewis.
Isn't that interesting?
Yes, absolutely. But we won't hold you no longer, Father Pfleger. Once again, we want to thank you so much for coming on to this program and being that prophetic voice, to help us to regain our footing, as children of God, to do what we need to do today to save our lives. You know what I mean? So once again, thank you once again. And may God continue to bless you and keep you safe. And we look forward to, God willing, having you on here again to talk about a new day.
Thank you, my brother. It's been an honor to be on here with you. Thank you, and blessings to you, and assalamu alaikum, my brother.
Wa alaikum salam.
Peace.
All of you for coming on and watching us, as we hope that you will share, this powerful interview conversation that we had with Father Michael Pfleger from the great faith community of St. Sabina. And we want to ask all of you to please share your thoughts with us in the comment section below. Follow us on social media at NNV News, and please like us and subscribe to our YouTube channel, our Facebook channel. And with that, I want to leave you and pray that God will bless you and your family. And this is Steve Muhammad with nnvnews.com.
Be a part of the force that powers truth in journalism. Your support helps to combat false media. Cash App NNV News.
Let's have a discussion. People have questions. They would like answers. Let's talk about the issues. Confront the things that may be difficult to address. The Black narrative.